Hellenic presidency. I hope we will live up to those expectations. Let me just respond to the comments. A lot of you have talked about the Hellenic presidency, the direction it's taking. It's important not to forget that in Europe, on our continent, ships have brought people together, brought civilizations together, allowed not only trade exchanges, but also an exchange of ideas. This helped to unite the Mediterranean and created what led in the end to the construction of Europe. This small ship was not just due to the Mediterranean people. There were people from the north who left in difficult conditions to discover new lands, and this meant that we came into contact with new peoples. At this difficult moment for Europe, at this time of crisis that we're all well aware of, we need to make the most of our common opportunities and overcome our shared problems by focusing on what we have in common and put in place the necessary changes so this small vessel can once again conquer new maritime areas. Some of you have wondered what the point of Europe is. It's not just an economic union. That was perhaps its starting point, but that's not the case anymore. It's not even just a political union. Europe is our responsibility. This continent, this union is a source of hope for many people. It was once a place of conflict and war, but that's all in the past now. What we need to do is to respond to the expectations of our citizens. We need to tell them that we are able to cooperate, we are able to coexist. We can work together around a common objective. It's not just the expectation of the citizens on this continent, it's also the hopes and expectations of other people, other continents. They see us as a source of hope for a better future. Now, moving on to immigration, a number of you talked about Dublin II. We have repeatedly said that changes need to be made. Europe has to deal with this phenomena. We need to tackle the problem at the source. This means the countries from which these migrants come. So we need to go there on the ground in these countries to provide help so that they don't feel the need to leave their countries anymore to find a better future, risking their lives and the lives of their children in the process. You know, some people really can't see beyond what's right in front of them. I've heard it said that each country needs to protect its own borders, but that's not fair. Everybody, for example, the Greeks, the Spanish, the Italians, the Maltese, we're in sensitive areas. We need to assure the protection of our borders, but whereas certain populations might feel safe or secure, it's because we're making an effort at the borders of the EU. If things go wrong for us, then other countries will have problems too. So we can't just deal with the problem here. And or in the countries of origin, we need to look at the transit countries as well. Some people like to try and shift the blame from these transit countries to the EU. But we need to look at this overall picture when we work with countries of origin and countries of transit. It's important to develop relations between these countries and the EU, build up step by step these relations, look at the progress being made to tackle immigration, whether it's a country of origin or a country of transit. Some of you have spoken of the sacrifices made by these people. I know that the President of the Commission who spoke before me said very positive things relating to this subject. I have to speak to you about what my country has done, not in a sentimental way with pretty words, but with facts and figures. I think this is a language that everybody can understand when I speak in figures, people that might not be affected by sentimental words. In this last period, we put in place a massive budgetary reform, the biggest ever realized in such a short space of time. In 4 years, we managed to reduce our deficit 13% of our current GDP. But in order to achieve this, we have seen our GDP drop by 25%, a quarter that we've lost of our GDP. That's the biggest fall in GDP on a global level since the Great Recession in the 30s. Over 6 consecutive years, and the average Greek citizen has lost 38% in terms of their basic cost of living. Also, there's a major problem with unemployment. We've seen unemployment go from 9 to 26%, over 26% as well. For young people under 25, we're talking at around 60%. I hope other countries don't have to go through such a tragedy. Now, what have we done to try and counter this? In the OECD table, we have Greece at the top in terms of structural reforms. According to all the studies, Greece has regained its competitiveness, all the competitiveness it has lost since 2002. Our trade deficit is down to 0 now. In 2013, for the first time, we had an initial surplus, and also a surplus in our balance of payments. In 2014, according to the forecasts, have relaunched a recovery after several painful years of recession. Now, we're still a long way from our targets that we want to achieve. There's a lot to be done yet, particularly in the framework of the structural reforms to stabilize the economy. I'd like to just come back to what I said at the very beginning of my comments, and President Barroso mentioned this too. At one point, Greece was the weakest link in the EU, but now we hold the EU presidency, and I think that represents a lot of hope, not just for Greece, although of course it does concern the Greek people, but also the whole of Europe. Certain people have tried to cast Greece as the black sheep of Europe. The older countries in Europe also have budgetary problems. So, as I said, we have to tackle this together in the same way as tackling our immigration problems and as well in terms of growth. It's important that we act together. Our citizens have certain expectations in terms not just of the directives and regulations that we adopt to improve their everyday lives. They want to see a unified Europe with a sense of solidarity, with countries supporting each other. I know that you agree with me about this. Certain people mentioned more extreme voices in southern and in northern countries of our continent. You all know that Euroscepticism in its different forms adapted to whatever country it might be in the south or the north is a major challenge, one that we will have to overcome. Some say that the new parliament well, people wonder what will happen with the next parliament. There's a real public debate, not just here in the heart of Europe in Brussels, but all over Europe. People fear that the new parliament might have a third of Eurosceptics. We're all wondering about what will happen to Europe in the future. It's important for us to think about Europe. We'll have to confront those people who are not reflecting European ideals through their acts or through what they say. Often, citizens don't feel that Europe is very close to them, but it's not true. Europe is right there beside them, even if it's not felt in society. We need to review our policies, our communications, and see how these policies really affect people. You know very well that a citizen's first contact is the local authorities, regional authorities. The revenues from local authorities, local regions, they're down by 30%. We met our German counterparts in Nuremberg. We told them that Greek local authorities lost 60% of their revenue. And we asked them what they would have done if they were in our shoes. And they said, well, we'd be protesting in the streets. Well, that's what our mayors are doing, our regional representatives. They're out in the streets. They want to put in place measures to support Greek citizens so they're not so hard hit by the effects of the crisis. In the new 2014-2020 programming period, it's important that we strengthen these measures at a local and regional level so that local authorities and regions can help cushion the blow of the crisis, and it's not the citizens that are so strongly affected, and citizens can feel a bit closer, that they can have a sense of security and protection from being part of a unified Europe.
Αυτών των χωρών που υφίστανται μεγάλη πίεση από την κρίση, αλλά και άλλων χωρών εκτός Ευρώπης που βιώνουν σοβαρά προβλήματα, πώς μπορούμε να σταθούμε αρρωγοί. Αναφέρθηκε το θέμα της αύξησης του λαϊκισμού. Μόνο αν δικές μας πολιτικές ανάπτυξης, ουσίας, ξέρετε, είναι το καλύτερο φάρμακο η ανάπτυξη να αντιμετωπίσει τις ακραίες φωνές. Αν θέλετε να σβήσει τις τάσεις εκείνες που βρίσκουν πρόσφορο έδαφος στην κοινωνία για να δημιουργήσουν όχι απλώς έναν ευρωσκεπτικισμό, αλλά θα έλεγα έναν ευρωαρνητισμό. Αν δεν μπορέσουμε να χτίσουμε πολιτικές ανάπτυξης που όμως να αγγίζουν την πραγματική οικονομία, δεν θα μπορέσουμε να αντιμετωπίσουμε αυτό το λαϊκισμό. Και αυτό θα είναι μια βόμβα στα θεμέλια της Ευρώπης. Ευχαριστώ.
Otherwise, we won't be able to properly confront this phenomenon of Euroscepticism, and this would be a serious threat to Europe and its foundations. Over as chair.